This is the king of the kingdom, Matt Taven, and don't be a Melvin and get into the wrestling epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
This is the Horror King, Vinny Marcellia, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Welcome to Championship Week right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. Not a misnomer, not a takeoff of Shark Week, which is happening over on Discovery Channel, but this is Championship Week right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com because we have two current champions in two major promotions joining us this week. Our guest this week we'll talk about in just a moment, and our later guest, which will be MLW Openweight Champion Alexander Hammerstone. But this interview is with the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Champion. He's Matt Taven. Must be easier when he gets to go, I'm Matt Taven, because he's Matt Taven just doesn't flow off the tongue. Had Taven on back in 2018 leading into the Supercard of Honor. At that time, it was the biggest show ever to see a Ring of Honor event, biggest crowd to ever see a Ring of Honor event as he took on Cody Rhodes. And here we are, a year and a half later, they've smashed that record. He is now the World Heavyweight Champion, and man, he is burning it up. If you see what he's doing out there, having great matches and really stealing the show. If you saw Manhattan Mayhem, what a great event that was. A great pay-per-view main event where he got to defeat Jeff Cobb. PCO is also falling to him, and soon he will be defending that championship at Summer Supercard as he takes on Alex Shelley of the Motor City Machine Guns.
Hey, this is TK O'Ryan, man. You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with us right now is the reigning World Heavyweight Champion of Ring of Honor. He is Matt Taven. Mr. Taven, are you with us?
I am. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, I can't complain. I'm the Ring of Honor World Champion.
And I'm so happy to say that you are the World Champion. I remember a clip of Steve Young when they finally won the Super Bowl. He said, "Can somebody get this monkey off my back?"
Get this monkey off my back, yes.
Yeah, is that what you felt like when you finally got to win the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship?
I guess so. Looking back on it, I still, it's still kind of a whirlwind to look back and even start to process it. It's such a grind getting to that moment, and for it to go down to Madison Square Garden like that, there was so much excitement about it. I didn't really think of getting really the monkey off my back, more of this is my moment to shine.
Absolutely.
But now, as champion, I think I feel that more and more, after matches like the Manhattan Mayhem match with Jay Lethal and Kenny King, and stringing that along with all my other title defenses, it feels like get the monkey off my back. Like, look at this, look at my resume, and to deny it just shows how big of a Melvin you are.
Exactly. And we'll get to Madison Square Garden because I got to talk about those moments. That was just incredible to watch. I can't imagine what you were feeling. But I wanted to start kind of with something that I have been interning in my head for a while. You did the ROH media call leading into the pay-per-view before the G1 Supercard. And it just seemed like the media, who you were ruthless on, and I thought was awesome, they just didn't seem like they thought that you were going to win the title. And I even mentioned it to Jay Lethal. I said, is it just me or is everybody else sleeping on Taven? And he went on to pay you huge respect. He said, anybody who doesn't think that Matt Taven has what it takes to be world champion is an idiot. And he said he'd go to bed well at night knowing that the Ring of Honor is well represented with Matt Taven as world champion. Kind of a maybe pay a compliment back. I know it's not in your character, but what do you think of Jay Lethal having said that about you?
I mean, Jay's no fool. And just like anytime I've spoken about Jay, I never take away from his abilities in the ring and what he's meant to Ring of Honor and just how good, if not the best Ring of Honor world champion there's been before me. And it's one of those things where, we take so much pride in what we do. And if you had been watching the product, and I do think there's a lot of fanboyism out there. So maybe Marty was the sexy pick, and the people that didn't actually pay attention to what was going on the screen missed the story that had been developing. And if you had been paying attention, it was no surprise. But, a lot of Melvins like to keep their heads in the sand, which is fine with me because I just keep pulling them out one by one.
Absolutely. And speaking of that pay-per-view main event, it was incredible. I'm speaking of the anniversary show where you guys went an hour. Just incredible match that you guys had. I guess you said online that you could have gone another half hour. I mean, that's just incredible to even think about.
It's one of those things where, and I'm not going to lie, I mean, I have my own podcast that I do, and they send in questions and ask about times where I was nervous going into the ring. And honestly, before the hour-long match, it's probably the most nervous I've been in a long time, just because that, Madison Square Garden is right around the corner, and this is really a make-or-break moment. And if it doesn't go well, it could cost you whatever is in line in the future. And if it does, it just solidifies your place. And then you're going out there for an hour with one of the best to be in the ring, and it's pressure. But man, something happened during that match that is like the reason why we're wrestlers in the first place. It's that adrenaline rush and that feeling, and my blood was pumping when that bell rang for 60 minutes. It was one of those crazy feelings where you're like, we could have even kept going. It's just we had such good momentum behind what we were doing in the ring, and it didn't even feel like 60 minutes had gone by for me personally. I was kind of doing the time in my head, and it's like, wow, the second half especially went by so quick, and it's such a feeling, and that crowd being so electric. I mean, especially the energy from that crowd, there's no doubt we probably could have kept going and going and going. But, man, that'll definitely go down when I look back at my career. It's probably one of my favorite matches.
Absolutely. You guys are heading back there for Death Before Dishonor in September, so it'll be cool to see if you guys can recapture that magic and the energy of that crowd from that match. That was incredible. So I gotta go there. I gotta go to Madison Square Garden. As a guy who's been watching Ring of Honor for years, who grew up in the New York, New Jersey area, I was so proud to see that many people to see that show. That was so awesome to see. Thoughts on and memories of your incredible moments winning the world title in front of a sold-out Madison Square Garden.
It's like you hear the stories of the people that you idolized and like what they thought of those big moments that happened in their careers. And you're kind of like, yeah, but what about the moment itself? Because everyone always talks about the little things that happen either before or after. And the moment is really so big, and there's so much going on that it truly is the drive home. It's not that long of a drive for me to go from New York to Boston. And, right. A lot of my friends and family were there. And just kind of driving back and reliving the moment in my mind, it was was finally when it kicked in, was like, holy, wow, like this all just happened. Because the energy is incredible in the moment, and I love it. The reaction when I grabbed that belt and looked around, of just such a mix of love and hate, and just people just with guttural emotions coming out of them, and like the smile on my face after that moment is so real and so it we made it, like we did it. But again, like right afterwards, you're doing like you're in the locker room and you're doing interviews and it's this and this and that until you have that moment by yourself the next day, really for me, to kind of like, whew, it's over. And that's what happened. It really doesn't sink in till then.
Awesome. So now that you are finally world champion, now that you've gotten the monkey off your back, as it were, is there more pressure? Do you feel more pressure as the guy that people look to in Ring of Honor?
I mean, definitely. And, you know, we've gone through a transition period in Ring of Honor, and I like to be that guy that says, like, I can still guide us through rough waters and make sure we come out on the other end. And that's all it is that, you know, Ring of Honor has seen changes happen over and over again. And I've seen Ring of Honor kind of continue to rebound and continue to rebuild itself and base itself on being the best wrestling on the planet. And just look at the guys that have come in since the beginning of the year. It's unreal the amount of talent that's now in Ring of Honor. I take a great sense of pride of kind of leading the ship during this time. So it's funny because, you know, you put so much work into getting to Madison Square Garden, and I've said this before, like it almost seems like that's how the story should end. And then a week later, I'm in Pittsburgh and Columbus and defending the title, and it's like, whoa, I didn't even get a chance to kind of to take it all in. And before you know it, it's on to the next thing. So, you know, I have a great sense of pride in myself too, because I'm still kind of living all this stuff as one big piece. You know, from Madison Square Garden till now, it's all still like I'm proving myself as the champion. And I put a great sense of pressure on myself, but it's more of a sense of pride in what this title means and living up to the expectations of it. So, you know, I've worked for the last 6 years in Ring of Honor, so 7 years now to get to this moment, and I wasn't going to let it just kind of be something that happened, and then I let my guard down, and before you know it, it was over. I plan on making sure that this title reign is one to remember.
All right. There's also spoils to being the main guy of Ring of Honor. I got to post the video of you throwing out the first pitch at the Boston Red Sox games. That had to be a cool moment for you to be in Fenway and do that.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's to think that, like, you know, I wrestled the Garden, and a couple months later, I'm throwing out the first pitch at Fenway Park. It's been quite a year. And for me, growing up in this area, being a kid that's always gone to Fenway, been a Red Sox fan my entire life, to think of all the people that I watched throw off of that mound, you know, from the Pedros, the Kurt Schilling, all the World Series that took place in that park, and to be able to walk out there and, you know, to have the world title around my waist and throw out the first pitch from the mound at Fenway Park, it's kind of, it's even weird saying it right now that actually happened. So it's definitely one of those things that's a dream come true for a lifelong Red Sox fan and just a person that grew up in this area.
All right, so we talked about what might be the match of the year when you and Jay Lethal went the hour-long match, but I think the line of the year so far is when you said to Marty Scurll that he wasn't tall enough to ride the train to go down to Jacksonville. That was a gut laugh that you got from me with that one. I have to go there, though. I have to ask you about the Elite leaving and the hole that it left in Ring of Honor. And we've kind of already talked about it a little bit, but how do you think the company is doing right now towards filling the hole that was left there and transitioning?
I mean, it's obviously going to be a process. You know, those guys, the Bucks have been here for really as long as I have, and we're such staples of the company. It's a big blow along with everyone else to you know, take familiar faces that you've invested in and transition somewhere else. But that's a wrestling business, and that's what we've seen time after time in all companies. And I think, like I said earlier, you know, you look at the people that Ring of Honor have brought in since the beginning of the year and think of all the fresh matchups that are now available in Ring of Honor, from the Ruches to the PCOs, Mark Haskins, Tracy Williams, Bandito, you know, PJ Black, There's Jeff Cobb is a fresh face in there. Like, there's just so much good and like top tier talent, all guys that, you know, could be anywhere on the card and you could just fit right into that slot. It's one of those things where you make the best out of a situation, and right now you really have an exciting time as a fan of Ring of Honor to see a lot of fresh matchups and to see a lot of guys that you have been probably just getting a little taste of. You know, Mark Haskins had been here or there before we would go to the UK, but now to see him on a full-time basis in ROH, or Roosh, I've wrestled, you know, in CMLL, and, you know, we've gone back and forth in Mexico forever, but now to see him in a U.S. company, it's a really exciting time to be a Ring of Honor fan. And I think that's going to be the thing that keeps us rolling is the amount of talent that we have in the locker room. Absolutely.
So I mentioned a great line. I have to mention it's a ominous day in history. 4 years ago, we lost Roddy Piper. How did Roddy Piper, if at all, impact your wrestling career?
You know, I had actually had a couple of interactions with Roddy Piper through Northeast Wrestling, which is a large independent company up in this area that would have him come in from time to time. And he was such a gracious person with his time. And I really remember like going up to him and talking about like cutting a babyface promo, because, you know, I was a young babyface at the time and it just didn't feel natural. And he was like, just telling me like, you know, when right now you're too afraid to be anything that's not babyface. He's like, you just got to be you and see what works and like what happens, and you got to find your voice and you'll figure out how to slant it as a babyface, but you can't go and get in front of a camera and be like, this is my babyface. It's still got to be who you are. And I was, at the time, I probably didn't even take it in as much as I do now when it comes to like finding my voice and whatever slant people are putting on it as far as your character, it still has to be from you. And that's a piece of advice that Roddy was gracious enough to throw my way in between me kind of fanboying about not only his wrestling career, but he was on my favorite TV show, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So I was kind of bugging him about what that experience was like. But like I said, he was so gracious with his time and just such a down-to-earth guy that it's kind of crazy to think that he's been gone for 4 years, because he left such a big impact on the wrestling world that you feel like he never left us, because he's left us with so many great memories. So it's definitely a tough one, but Roddy leaves a legacy behind that will be one to cherish.
Okay, we're going to get back to Ring of Honor in just a second, but I don't know how well you know the history of what I do, but if you know who my old co-host was, he asked me to ask you this. Did you ever get paid on time by IPW UK?
IPW, did I ever get paid on time? I think so.
It's just a joke.
Nothing popped into my mind. I
didn't know if there was a story there. Yeah.
Okay? I don't know. I don't know.
My old co-host used to be Daniel Edler, who used to run IPW UK. So when he saw I was having you on, he said, "Oh, ask him about that." Yeah. So. All right. So a couple last questions here for you. A couple months ago, when Sinclair Broadcasting got involved with Fox Sports and purchased the majority share of that, the internet did what the internet does and said, oh, well, they're going to put Ring of Honor on there. And there was even reports that the locker room was buzzing that was a possibility. Where did we stand with that? And was there any truth to that at the beginning? And might it still happen?
I mean, honestly, we hear the same kind of rumors that probably everyone else hears. So it's like Sinclair Broadcasting, it's not really kind of letting Ring of Honor in on all their business secrets when it comes to Sinclair. We're you know, when people label us with Sinclair, it kind of, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because we are a little bit of like a small, very small portion of that. So we're really not in on any meetings going on, or they're not coming to me and asking my opinion with anything. But No, we hear those same rumors, but like everything in wrestling, you're going to hear a million different things going in a bunch of different directions. And until it's done, you really can't count your chickens before they hatch. Anyone that's been involved in wrestling, I'm sure, knows of a story or two of this is going to happen or that's going to happen when it comes to television deals. And honestly, I would hope that Sinclair obviously is making any move they can to grow the product. But again, until anything is finalized, it's just wishful thinking at this point.
Very cool. Two final questions for you. One of them has to be about those letters that I'm kind of getting tired of typing, and that's AEW. How do you, as the Ring of Honor champion, view AEW? Do you view it as competition, or is it just another place for the boys to work?
I mean, it's another place for the guys. Like there is no, and I never understand this. Like there's no wrestling company that I ever think should be rooted against. If we're fans of wrestling and we want to see the guys succeed and have opportunities and be able to perform, you hope that the growth of every aspect of the industry continues to get bigger, no matter what company it is. So to me, it's a wonderful thing. Like the more buzz you can create about wrestling, and the more you can grow a fan base, it leads you from one place to the other. I was a huge wrestling fan as a kid, and I grew up a WWF or E now at the time fan, and it was because of that I would find out about WCW. I would be like, oh, where is this guy from? I'd find out about WCW. I'd go watch some of that. I'd find out about ECW. I'd go watch some of that. And it's because of, wrestling in general would lead me other places with my fandom. So, the growth of wrestling in general is something that we should all be rooting for and we should all be hoping for. So I wish everyone nothing but the best.
All right. And, of course, we have a big show coming up August 9th. You're going to be defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Alex Shelley, formerly of the Motor City Machine Guns. I read on ringofhonor.com, Ring of Honor Wrestling, that there was not ever a match between you two, at least not a singles match. Thoughts heading into your title defense against such a game competitor in Alex Shelley?
Alex Shelley is someone that I've watched for years and someone that I really respect, and I think honestly doesn't get enough credit for the innovation that we especially see in tag team wrestling these days. I mean, I think of the Young Bucks or Generation Me or whatever you want to call them against the Machine Guns in TNA and thinking wow, this is leading to what we know now as tag team wrestling. And Alex Shelley is someone that has been around the world, and we have collided, but always in tag matches in different formats, but never one-on-one. And I think that's my advantage because I am the Ring of Honor World Champion. Obviously, holding that title, I have plenty of one-on-one experience, and Alex Shelley is coming back from time off where he hasn't been in the ring like I have. He hasn't been put in one-on-one situations, and when he has been in the ring, it's been in tag situations. So I think that right there, the fact that we have never gone one-on-one is to my advantage. But I'm not taking Alex Shelley lightly by any means. He's a very accomplished wrestler and a guy that's been, all the same places that I have, and has done nothing but succeed. But Matt Taven has worked harder than any man in history to become the Ring of Honor World Champion. And if he thinks Alex Shelley is going to take it off him, well, then Alex might be a bigger Melvin than I thought.
All right, and you mentioned the word Melvin. When you get the chance, go on Google and type in Parker and Sons. I mentioned it to you. There's an ad campaign, and they say, and there'll be no Melvins on your job, and they have a guy named Melvin just doing this goofy act. You might get a kick out of it, given your Melvin. All right.
I might have to get some royalties for that.
Well, I was thinking sponsorship. Maybe you should be on the commercial.
Hey, yeah, we'll figure something out.
All right, man. Well, I wanted to say this. It might be me fanboying, but I had you on a year and a half ago because I really wanted to have you on because you were just doing such incredible stuff. And to see that from what you were doing then to what you're doing now, and now that you're the guy, you're the world champion, so happy for you, and it couldn't happen to a better guy. I'm so happy for you, man.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Honestly, it's the stuff that I was doing a year and a half ago and getting people behind me that led us to this moment. So I can't thank you enough.
All right, man. Well, I'll let you go and get on with your day. Sorry to take you away from whatever you were doing, but I appreciate you taking the time and doing this with me.
No worries at all. Thank you. We'll do it again sometime.